Okay, so when I say the word Oxford, what picture pops into your head? It's probably this, right? A city that looks like it's straight off a postcard, all golden stone, with this incredible skyline of towers and spires. And for hundreds of years, that's been its brand. A city that is its world-famous university. But here's the thing. That beautiful, serene image, well, it's kind of a lie. It's just the surface. And if you scratch beneath that surface, you find a story that's way more complex and, frankly, a whole lot more interesting. It's a story of brutal conflict, weird contradictions, and some just plain bizarre stuff. So let's get into it.
First, let's just take a moment with that postcard image because you can't deny it's powerful. This is the Oxford we see in movies, the one we read about in books. It feels timeless, almost like a city built purely for quiet thought and deep learning.
The poet Matthew Arnold just nailed this feeling way back in 1865. He called it that sweet city with her dreaming spires. And that phrase just stuck, because it perfectly captured the romantic, peaceful vibe of the city's skyline. It paints this picture of a place just dreaming its way through history. But that dream has very often been a nightmare. Seriously, for every tale of scholarly genius, there's a story of bloody, violent conflict. The real history of Oxford isn't just written in ink on paper, it's stained right into the cobblestones.
So here's the question I want you to think about. If these gorgeous, honey-colored stones could actually talk, they wouldn't just be whispering about poetry and philosophy. Oh no, they'd be screaming. Screaming with stories of riots, public executions, and even civil war. And the level of violence could be just staggering. Get this. In 1355, a simple argument in a pub over some bad wine exploded into a 3-day, all-out street battle. The final death toll? An estimated 93 people. This wasn't just a brawl. It was a brutal, deadly symptom of the hatred between the town and the gown.
And that riot in 1355, it was not a one-off, not by a long shot. This timeline shows that conflict is basically a theme running through Oxford's history. Back in 1209, violence got so bad that a bunch of scholars just packed up and left to start a rival university. You might have heard of it, it's called Cambridge. After that 1355 riot, the town was punished for 500 years. Then you get the Reformation, and they're burning religious martyrs right in the middle of the street. And by the 17th century, the whole city becomes the capital for one side in a brutal civil war.
And this isn't just abstract history, it's made up of these incredibly powerful human moments. Imagine this. Bishop Hugh Latimer is literally about to be burned alive, and he turns to his friend and says these words of defiance. It's this unbelievable moment of courage that turns a horrific public execution into a powerful symbol that has lasted for centuries.
So beyond all the open warfare, there's this other side to Oxford, a hidden, secret side. This is a place that is absolutely soaked in folklore, ghost stories, and some traditions that are just wonderfully strange. It's almost like the city's violent past just refuses to stay dead and buried. Oxford is famously haunted. I mean, you've got an archbishop who was beheaded for treason, and his ghost supposedly plays a game of bowls with his own head. The ghost of King Charles I is said to wander his old wartime headquarters, and there are phantoms and headless priests all over the place.
But the weirdness isn't all ancient history. You have to see this. It's a 25-foot-long shark, and it's crashing right through the roof of a totally normal house in the suburbs. It was put there overnight in 1986 with no permission as this wild protest against censorship and nuclear weapons. The local government fought for years to get it taken down, but in the end, the shark won. It's just a perfect symbol of Oxford's rebellious, quirky spirit.
The city even has its own time zone, literally. Oxford time runs 5 minutes behind the rest of Great Britain. And this isn't just a historical curiosity. Every single night, the huge bell at Christ Church, Great Tom, rings 101 times, one for each of the original students, at 5 minutes past 9. It's a sound echoing right out of the Middle Ages, marking a curfew that no longer exists. And that brings us to another huge part of the story, a major contradiction that often gets completely overlooked. For a huge chunk of the 20th century, the biggest thing happening in Oxford had nothing to do with the university. It was about industry. It was like there were two completely separate cities living side by side. And the contrast between them is just stark. On one side, you've got University Oxford, the gown, a world of medieval buildings, ancient libraries, and intellectual debate. And on the other side, you had industrial Oxford, the factory, a world of massive, roaring car assembly lines, powerful unions, and huge working-class neighborhoods built around factory smokestacks. They were two different worlds, sharing a name and not much else. And just look at the raw numbers here. Around 1930, the Morris Car Factory employed over 15,000 people. That was way more than the entire university population, students and staff all put together. For decades, the factory, not the colleges, was the biggest and most powerful force in the city. This kind of social division was everywhere, and it was incredibly specific. Even inside the university, class was a huge deal. Back in the 18th century, you could tell exactly where a student stood on the social ladder just by the type of tassel on his graduation cap. The whole city was a map of social hierarchy that everyone just knew how to read. So what does all this mean? It means Oxford is not some museum piece, preserved in amber. It's a living, breathing city of paradoxes. It's constantly wrestling with its complicated past while trying to figure out its future. Its story is far from over, and its capacity to change is just immense. Think about this for a second. The university refused to grant degrees to women until 1920. Barely a century later, it's educating world-changing women like Nobel Prize winner Malala Yousafzai. That is a massive transformation in a pretty short amount of time. But its long history also creates some really difficult modern dilemmas. Oxford has educated countless world leaders. But what happens when some of those alumni become deeply controversial figures? When their actions seem to go against the very values the university claims to uphold? This whole question of uncomfortable alumni is a very real, very current debate.
And the human stories that make up this city are just full of these incredible, mind-bending contradictions. Take the Oxford English Dictionary, one of the greatest academic projects ever. Well, one of its most prolific and brilliant contributors was a man who mailed in over 10,000 perfect entries from his cell in an asylum for the criminally insane. You just can't make this stuff up. So, at the end of the day, what is Oxford? It's not just the dreaming spires. It's a city of deadly riots and world-changing scholarship, of headless ghosts and protest sharks, of factory workers and Nobel laureates. It is a living, breathing paradox that is always, always rewriting its own story. And the only real question is, what will the next chapter be?